around 1915, 1916, thousands of volunteer British soldiers shipped off to France to fight the Germans. Their duffels were packed, so was mine. Well, we say British, but they were mostly volunteers from British colonies across the world, as far as New Zealand and Africa. Welcome to the Somme. We've all seen this poster before. This is Kitchener's recruitment poster between 1914 and 1916, when he was tasked to recruit 500,000 volunteers from British colonies as far as Australia, New Zealand, South Africa. But by 1916 he managed to recruit 2.5 million volunteers, and they were known as Kitchener's Army. Oh, wait, that we have to see. The Chapelais Cemetery behind me contains the graves of more than 550 British, Australian, New Zealand and Indian soldiers who all died defending the Western Front during the war between 1914 and 1919. This is the town of Perron. It was lost and won a few times during the war. It is easy to forget that both sides actually lost soldiers. This behind me is the German cemetery. The French has a very special way of remembering the past. You see war memorials everywhere. Today I realized that the Somme is no exception. Well, plan A was to sleep in a totally different town and then start with the main British battlefields. But as plan A didn't work, I get to start with the South African side this morning. Nice and cool, brisk morning this morning, but let's go see. Okay, let's start at the beginning now. In December 1915, the Allied forces launched a combined offensive against the Imperial German forces. The Somme offensive was supposed to be a Franco-British offensive led by the French and supported by Kitchener's army. However, in February 1916, the Germans attacked Verdun and the French moved the bulk of their troops there to defend it, leaving the Somme offensive basically to the British. Okay, welcome to Longueval. Kitchener's army was made out of groups like work colleagues or friends or family, or even sports clubs like this. This is why the battalions were known as the Pels battalions. Presented by the village of Longueval by the British Footballers League as a symbol of the contributed friendship between our nations. In 1926, the South African government bought this piece of land known as the Delville Forest as a tribute to those who died here. However, in 1940, it was given back to the French government, but is still on loan to South Africa today. The monument behind me was designed by Sir Herbert Baker, same person who designed the Union buildings. Replicas of this monument can be seen in the design of the Union buildings as well as at Parliament in Cape Town. While walking in this forest, all you can hear is the chatter of millions of birds. So it's hard to imagine that during the 6 weeks of fighting, this place was flattened. Nothing remained but for one tree. All the walkways in this forest was named after well-known streets in London. I know it's a bit far, but even the wildlife seems to have returned. Hard to see it, but I would be able to stand upright in this crater, and I would still not be able to see over the rim. After the war, this whole forest was replanted by seeds gathered from oak trees in the Western Cape. Die laaste boom. Hierdie haagbreek is die enigste boom wat die slag van 1916 oorleef het. Despite the crater I just walked through and the shrapnel in its trunk, this is the only tree that survived the battle and is still growing strong today. Being about 5 meters deep, today you would imagine this is a riverbed more than trenches. From this point, on the 15th of July 1916, nearly 3,200 South African soldiers entered the forest. Their mission was to capture and hold it at all cost, which they did. After 6 weeks of fighting, only 143 of them walked out of here alive. Hierdie altaarsteen is deur die regering van die Unie van Suid-Afrika opgerig ter herdenking aan al die opofferings van alle Suid-Afrikaners wat hulle lewens gegee het in die oorlogstonele op land, ter see en in die lug. This is the British South African cemetery at Delville Forest. Nearly 2,000 graves are located here, of only which about 160 are known. As you walk through here, it's very noticeable that many of the graves would mention the unit or the rank that the soldier had, easily identifiable by their uniforms, except most of them are unknown or known only unto God. In the middle of a farmer's field, there's this, the New Zealand Memorial. Unfortunately, it's a no entry zone, but you can read it from the road. In honor of the men of the New Zealand Division, First Battle of the Somme 1916. Welcome to the Royal Enfield British Cemetery. Towards the end of 1916, this valley here at the back saw some of the heaviest fighting during the war. After the armistice in 1918, bodies were recovered, and in 1919 this cemetery was started. In 1916, Private Henry Parker was reported missing. 100 years later, a body of an airman was found nearby. Through DNA testing, Henry Parker was positively identified, and he was laid to rest here by his family in 2017. Built during the Roman times, this artificial hill was used and heavily fortified by the Germans during the attack on Wallencourt. Oddly enough, it would see action again 22 years later in the Second World War. Today, I'm heading out to the northern side of the front, to a place called Serre. On July the 1st, the first day of the Somme offensive, the Franco-British troops suffered 57,000 casualties, nearly 20,000 dead, making it the bloodiest day in the history of the British Army. The Sheffield Memorial is on private land. So, respecting the farmer, I'm just going to park outside at the cemetery and then walk the 600 meters up to the memorial. In amongst the farmer's fields, the first place you get up to is this cemetery. Before even entering the memorial, you can clearly see the trenches are still here today. Now, imagine that soldiers had to start from here and cross this open field towards those clump of trees over there. Only once you stand in this trench do you realize how vulnerable Kitchener's army was when the soldiers had to cross this field. Dedicated to the memory of the members of the African Pels, so many of whom fell here during the attack on the Serre on the 1st of July 1916, on the opening phase of the Battle of the Somme. Their name liveth forever. In memory of the men of the Z Company, or the Burnley District Pels, who fell here on or near the spot at the opening of the Battle of the Somme, July 1916. At the going down of the sun and in the morning we will remember them. It's hard to imagine that soldiers would leave the safety of this trench, cross this open piece of field. This must have been a massacre. Walking across towards the cemetery, I'm walking across the same fields that those soldiers would have had to cross. That tree line over there is where the Pels divisions would have jumped out from. Most of them would have been dead or wounded by the time they got to where I'm standing now. This is the Serre Road number 1 cemetery, where most of those fallen from the Pels battalions were buried. Sadly, a lot of the soldiers who died on the battlefield lay there for quite some time before it was safe enough to recover their bodies. By then they were unrecognizable. This is why a lot of the graves have no names on it. Age 16, Horace Isles was the youngest to die of the Pels soldiers. His grave is located towards the back of the cemetery. This road, which I just came in on, is known as Sunken Lane. It was extensively used by the British to attack the German front line on the other side. What it looks like today and what it looked like on the day. Towards the end of Sunken Lane, you find this monument. Now, if you stand here, on that hill there is where the British front line was, and on the left over there is where the German front line was. Standing inside the Beaumont Hill crater, you get a picture of how big this hole actually is. Hawthorne Hill, or crater as it is today, was blown up by British soldiers who tunneled all the way here from the British front line, packed the base full of explosives and blew it up. However, the Germans returned, so a few months later the British blew it up again, hence the reason it is so big today. This is the Newfoundland Memorial Park, where you can see some of the best examples of preserved trenches, both British and German. First stop, the museum. After arriving here, the 1st Newfoundland Regiment started digging trenches in anticipation of the British offensive. The first trench was dug and was named the St. John's Trench after the capital city of Newfoundland. The Newfoundlanders were situated behind the British lines. The problem they had was that some of these trenches here were so blocked with bodies that they had to climb out into the open to get to the front line, most of them getting killed before even taking part in the battle. The caribou was the emblem of the Newfoundlanders. This is Danger Tree. Behind this little ridge here, many of the Newfoundlanders took refuge against the German machine gun fire. This is the German front line. Look back all the way over there is where the Newfoundlanders were. The Highlanders Memorial. This is the Memorial to the Missing of the Somme. On it are the names of 72,000 soldiers that were never found or recovered. 72,000 families that don't know what happened to their relatives. Lochnagar Crater, another German stronghold that was taken out by the British mining companies. before I set off on my last day, I found a brilliant channel that's got a lot of information that helped me plan a lot of the sites I wanted to see, called History in Your Hand. I will leave a link in the description. Just left camp. I'd like to ask at this point, please show those like and subscribe buttons. It does tickle my ego a little bit. Anyways, I'd like to reflect on a few things. Up to 400 shells a minute dropping on Delverwood Forest. 3 million soldiers fought here. 1 million casualties, 300,000 dead, and another 72,000 missing. Did anybody really win this war? If you were wondering where the name Somme comes from, this is the Somme River.